as I believe this warm front, basically this deep moisture blob, is going to continue drifting north through central South Dakota, eventually setting up across north central, northeastern South Dakota. We could call that a warm front, basically a moisture surge. And then the low-level jet's going to ramp up as we get closer to evening, near and just about after sunset. That's when I think that tornado threat's going to be maximized. Storms will develop in the vicinity of that warm front, lifting up close to the South Dakota, North Dakota border by this evening. And then that cluster of supercells is going to migrate through southeastern North Dakota, northeastern South Dakota, and the southern edge of that cluster of supercells, the low-level jet's just going to crank into it. That's where the greatest wind shear is going to be, with those supercell storms that are able to anchor along the southern edge of that cluster of supercells. Also maybe some of those early supercells that are able to develop. I'm live at Dominator Fore. Gizmo is in the passenger seat. Temperature right now 91 degrees, but I just came from the sandhills where those dew points are in the upper 60s, and it definitely felt moist down there as I was heading north through the Nebraska sandhills from Ogallala from last night. Gizmo was walking this morning. She did produce a stool, even though I couldn't confirm it visually. She did get into the crouch position, and she takes off and sprints full speed right after she does the stool. So sometimes it's difficult to find out exactly where it ends up, but usually Gizmo goes to the bathroom in the morning. It means that we end up seeing a tornado in the evening. Storm motions are going to be very slow moving, so any tornado that is able to anchor on the surging moisture blob on the northern periphery of it is going to be slow moving and very chaseable. I'm going to be delivering a multi-platform stream on this storm. Storm Prediction Center has a slight risk out for this area, extending from just northeast of the Black Hills to near the Bismarck area, eastward and southeastward through north central South Dakota. My plan is to head to Pier, maybe get a hamburger there. About 11 years ago when we were shooting Storm Chasers, there were flooding concerns with the river there in Pier after so much rainfall, and with the snow melt too from the previous winter. So there were people that were sandbagging throughout town, throughout Pier, building up those sandbag barriers to prevent inundation of buildings. But there was a lot of flooding, catastrophic flooding back then. Not as much of that this year. In fact, there's a drought across North Dakota, and South Dakota as well. So any rainfall is going to be very welcome up there. Any complexes of storms that are able to form. And anytime you have moisture this deep surge northward toward far northern South Dakota this time of year, usually means that the temperature is going to be about 90. That dew point is going to be about 67 up there, right along the northern periphery of that warm front. And that's going to create nuclear instability up there along the northern periphery of that Cape blob. And right near that warm frontal zone too, there's going to be some east-southeasterly surface winds. And those east-south, a lot of directional shear, a lot of speed shear. And then you're going to get that southerly low-level jet increasing over top of it, increasing through 40 knots by about 0 to 1Z, about 7 to 8 p.m. Central Daylight Time. That low-level jet cranking over those low-level southeasterlies, and with that instability of those upper 62 points cooling up along that warm front, I wouldn't be surprised to even see a significant tornado this evening, and extending for at least a couple hours after sunset, maybe even longer than that. And I think that cluster of supercell storms is going to push east toward the I-29 corridor, midnight, early morning hours tomorrow. And then it looks like northeastern Montana tomorrow could be quite active. It is going to be warm, temperature-wise, those dew point spreads, but there should be a west to east oriented boundary, some type of a differential heating boundary there in northeastern Montana that I think will bring those LCLs a little bit lower. Speaking of LCLs, the Dominator weather stations that Mark is working on right now, we're going to have LCLs on the display, on the digital display of those weather stations. And I just got a text from him right now that the data is communicating through Bluetooth. So we're excited to make those Dominator weather stations available here soon. Research grade weather stations, basically like the Campbell Scientific for the common person. also wants to do research, Storm Chaser as well, using all the latest technologies. And you can sign up for updates on those weather stations at dominatorwx.net, dominatorweather.net. That's where the email sign up is located. Very excited about that. And I think we're going to have multiple days of high plains insanity. I think the high plains are going to be nuts this year for severe weather. And we'll have a smooth transition from northern high plains, likely to hurricane season. I just read that Southern Oscillation Index is starting to go positive again. That means that we're starting to drift back toward La Nina, hinting at maybe even a year or two La Nina event that should continue through hurricane season and the upcoming winter, which would definitely be possibly yielding a more active than normal tropical hurricane season in the Atlantic, at least. Usually those La Ninas mean that the Atlantic basin's going to be a little bit more active, whereas El Ninos usually means that the Pacific basin's going to be more active, including out there in the western Pacific. But today's going to be one of those stationary supercells. These shades are the Dominator glass. So these make it possible for me to see storms that are like 90 to 100 miles in the distance that other people cannot see with the naked eye. So I wear the Dominator glass during chase mode. I might even get a beef burrito up here in Pierre, South Dakota. I don't know if any of you guys played the Oregon Trail or not back in the day, but that was when I first became introduced to Pierre, South Dakota. And then Northern Plains chase mode, I come through Pierre all the time. All the time. Got my bike as well. Bike is inside the vehicle. This way I don't have a similar incident that I had there west of Lubbock when I was chasing the Button tornado, when I actually dragged the bike behind me for about 10 miles on that mud road, and it got caked up with clay. The whole bike was covered in a massive clay blob. But miraculously it wasn't damaged. I did grind down the left handlebar a little bit, about a 1/4 inch. Thankfully though, I have the aluminum handlebars, not the carbon fiber. But I'm going to be biking as well in the Black Hills there, basing in Deadwood. Deadwood is my Northern Plains base. Gamble a little bit. You're within range of high plains, eastern Wyoming, eastern Montana, Dakotas. So I'm excited to drop into Deadwood and get some of those boar bags as well, which is the appetizer that they have there in Deadwood, Deadwood Social Lounge. Pork bundles, good stuff, incredibly flavored. Give me a nice blowout though the next day. It's relaxing. It's definitely going to be a later show today. I wouldn't be surprised even if supercells initiated like 5 or 6 p.m. So it could be a later initiating with these storms. Later initiation, but could be right along that warm front there with those east-southeasterly surface winds with a low-level jet increasing about 40 knots over top of that, especially 7 or 8 p.m. And that's going to create pretty strong wind shear that will increase above about 200 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative felicity. And then even above that as you get closer to 8 or 9 p.m. Pretty excited to be talking to Flex Seal right now as well. We even discussed coating the whole entire Dominator Fore with Flex Seal liquid and at least test it out to see how the hail behaves on that reinforced surface, almost like a Line-X bed liner type deal. Thank you, Julie, for the super chat contribution. That makes live storm chasing like this possible. Thank you. Getting good southerlies here. Temperature 92 degrees, but I'm a little bit north of that moisture surge. I think it's near or just to the south of I-90. Just to the south. I think that moisture really ramps up. Looking at the surface map, those dew points rise well into the 60s, even the upper 60s. Southern South Dakota, all the way through Nebraska. That moisture is surging north and west right now. Also considering the flex paste, using that little tool to kind of put a little bit of that product into the gaps, waterproof Dominator Fore ahead of hurricane season. That's a lot of damage! Coming through Murdo, South Dakota right now. I've stayed here quite a few times. Good old American Inn. I get lucky, maybe I'll even find a bean burrito here in town. Really headed toward here and then eventually north and northeast of there, closer to that North Dakota border. By about 5, 6 p.m. they'll fire. A lot of times they end up firing north of that border too. North of the moisture gradient, and you'll get kind of some elevated storms that will develop initially on the North Dakota side, and then the moisture surge will run into those storms, lower their bases, and then they go berserk, go tornadic as well as that low-level jet increases. So I've got some tourists here pulling up on my left. Now they're laughing at the vehicle a bit. That's funny. Need some hail dents in theirs. It's a beautiful sky out here. Not the sky that you often see on those tornado days when you wake up and you already get the cumulus field that is already building. In this case, this is kind of the arrival of the moisture. Today, day 1, represents the arrival of this moisture from the south. Sometimes there could be concerns as to the quality of the moisture, especially when the moisture is just arriving, like in the southern plains, for example, early season, earlier in the spring. This time of year, though, you've got such deep moisture dominating the central and southern U.S. that usually the moisture quality, even on the very northern periphery of these moisture blobs, is pretty robust. Since it's not getting transported northward by like an 80-knot low-level jet, it just kind of slowly oozes off to the north, and that means that that front edge of that moisture is just a little bit deeper, a little bit higher quality moisture, and that's another reason why I think this could even be the threat of a strong tornado happening this evening. making a beeline toward pier. Really, my target is kind of the Bow Bridge area. Right along the northwestern gradient of that supercell composite where it meets up with the boundary. Maybe the northwestern gradient. That juicy air. Thank you guys for joining me here for this live update. Like that northeast Texas into northwestern Louisiana, far southern Arkansas target is looking pretty favorable for tornadoes today. With an MCV down there, mesoscale convective vortex lifting out to the east-northeast. About getting lunch in pier, maybe in Bow Bridge, because storms aren't going to initiate until maybe 5 or 6 p.m. I have not looked at the HRRR model. Not a big fan of that model, especially the composite reflectivity forecast. I will use it for environments here and there, but just not very good on dew points. Over mixes those surface dew points, and really, the air is just feed off of each other. You get a positive feedback with those error terms and it just spirals out of control. So I'm more of a RAP, high resolution NAM kind of forecaster. And we'll use the global models, of course, for the medium and long range. And I'm a big fan of the RAP, high resolution NAM and those types of models. A lot of times this time of year, forecasters and storm chasers are looking for reasons not to make the drive. Usually during their storm chase vacations, they get a little bit tired from driving those distances. And then during the late season, they start getting tuckered out. And that's why a lot of times, especially during July, you'll get these storms all to yourself up here. This is kind of when I take my vacation a little bit up here in the Northern Plains. It's my favorite place to chase up here. I like to go to Deadwood, I like to see nature, do some trail running, mountain biking, and intercept as many tornadoes as possible. I plan to intercept about 50 tornadoes between now and hurricane season, maybe even more during fall season as well. Never really found my momentum or my mojo this year, despite seeing about 15 or 16 tornadoes. Should be up at about 40 this time of year, but I'm not one to stress out about tornado count. I just like to do up close intercept things with these tornadoes. So if a tornado happens, I like to get about 100 yards away from it. So if I'm not within range and I'm not able to get that video, it's disappointing sometimes when you think about what could have been with some of these tornadoes and I'm further away from her that I'm not within range to intercept. You never know a small scale feature you might capture in your high resolution video that could unravel one of the mysteries behind tornadoes. Even just videotaping these storms is major science. We're dealing with greater resolutions in our camcorders, time and space, and that allows us to see features with tornadoes that we otherwise wouldn't be able to. More storm chasers are getting closer to these storms than ever before, which is also kind of a dangerous thing, but it's the fact of having a greater number of storm chasers out in the field. There's going to be people that are able to get closer to a greater number of tornadoes and identify more smaller scale features that otherwise wouldn't be there. But it is still very dangerous to get up close to these storms, and the most dangerous thing is probably the driving. There are other drivers out there. It's almost like Mario Kart, rally car racing when you're out there storm chasing during peak season when everybody's taking their storm chase vacations. That's why I'd recommend taking the storm chase vacation in the early spring or even later, late June into July. Let's take a look at that surface map and see where those dew points are going. Dew point in Pier is 59 right now, but just to the southeast of Pier it ramps up to 67. So it's 88 over 59 in Pier. Huron is 86 over 66. Aberdeen 87 over 45. A little bit drier up in Aberdeen. All right, thank you guys for those super chat contributions. I like going live on the way to the target too. It's almost like a podcast type of a feel. Talk about whatever. Talk about food, talk about bean burritos, talk about storms, Cape blobs. Work at the periphery of those parameters, whether it be Cape or Energy Helicity Index or Storm Relative Helicity, or even the SPC outlook. Usually working that northern or western gradient of those blobs is a good technique that'll land you a lot of tornadoes over time. Gizmo's getting a little bit of sun. What a beautiful day. Yeah. I have seen some comparisons to the Bowdle, South Dakota wedge setup from 2010, May 22nd. And that was also late arrival of that moisture on a west disoriented warm front across northeastern South Dakota. And in fact, the whole entire vortex operation sat out that day, and they even took a day off on the Big Bowdle Day. One of the craziest, slow-moving, more violent wedges that I've ever seen. That's also a lesson that I learned a couple weeks ago, is that even when you're out of gas, sometimes you just got to never stop chasing. Keep chasing until the head hits the pillow, because the second you quit and go home, that's when crazy things happen, even if you're just working outflow boundaries for the entire peak season month of May. You almost get those pseudo landspout type tornadoes on those outflow boundaries. You'll notice that a lot of those tornadoes intercepted during peak season are rated EF1, EFU, almost more landspouts, lower base storms producing landspouts, stretching that horizontal vorticity into the vertical and mechanically sucking it up, tightening the vortex. very easy to get condensation below a low base storm. When those LCLs are just above the ground, it doesn't take much of a negative pressure perturbation to generate runaway condensation, and that's why a lot of times with these low base storms, even weak tornadoes will be fully condensed to the ground. But I always tell people you got to watch out for those high base storms that have a full condensation funnel all the way to the ground, because that requires a very dramatic pressure fall near ground level to achieve condensation when you have big temperature dew point spreads below a high base storm.
Use the right lane to take exit 212.
All right, here we go. Let's look at this surface map. Mitchell, 89 over 68, very deep moisture. So I'm going to play just east of the Missouri River here.
Take the exit, then turn left onto Highway 53.
Man, do I feel good. That activated charcoal fiber medicine. I feel like I'm 25 years old. After just taking about a week to recharge. Here we go, Fort Pier. Let's do it. Let's do this. One of my favorite areas, scenic-wise, too, is this Missouri River Valley area of central South Dakota. Beautiful rolling hills. You know, the dammed up reservoirs aren't natural. They're still incredibly beautiful. Wonderful fishing on those. Massive now hiring signs everywhere. Fast food places, gas stations. Looks like everybody's ready to get back to work. Excited to smoke meats again this weekend after this series of storm chases. Maybe do a brisket this weekend on that Traeger grill. Thank you, Facebook supporters, for making that happen for my 40th birthday. Pandemic 40th. Look at the beautiful terrain out here. Rolling hills. Just a fantastic area to be. Beautiful. Yeah, today is a slight risk up here. See that dew point jump up with a reload there in Pier, 88 over 59. I bet the next reload's going to be in the 60s. And we're riding that moisture gradient northward from I-90. Sioux Falls is up to 66, 84 over 66. So I think that boundary is going to settle in there somewhere far northern South Dakota, near that North Dakota-South Dakota border. And any storms that do develop are largely going to be stationary, hardly moving. They'd be like 20 knots. So it'd be easy to deliver a multi-platform stream on these storms once they fire up. But I also like to run these live streams on my way to the target. An opportunity to basically do a podcast type deal. Might even have guests on here. Guest storm chasers in the car. Let it rip that way. Got Dominator glass on because I can see storms that develop 80, 90 miles away when other people can't see them with the naked eye. I'm capable of seeing those storms from very long range with Dominator glass. Some beautiful wispy cirrus clouds up there. Bright blue sky, enjoying that too. Wow. 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 There's already a Central American gyre developing down south of the Gulf of Mexico, Western Caribbean Ocean. Some of the models, including the GFS, even spin up a tropical system down there. But anytime you're looking at the long range, the GFS has been notorious for spinning up those tropical systems down there, and then they don't come to fruition. But there is a Central American gyre down there, so it's not completely based in outside of reality. Welcome to Fort Pier. It's pretty moist in the sandhills too as I was heading north from Ogallala through the sandhills. Well, it looks like they're starting to mix out now. Dew points are dropping into the 50s down there. So really the best dew points are in central, southern South Dakota. It does look like Murdo's got an 87 over 62 now. Maybe a little channel of moisture heading out west of the Missouri River Valley also. I don't know if you guys look at the NATO cast or not. Basically uses the HREF, SREF plumes, ensembles, short-range ensemble forecast. But it has that bullseye in northeastern Texas, northwestern Louisiana, far southern Arkansas, with an MCV down there. Some destabilization happens. I know there were some tornadoes yesterday down in southern Louisiana. Yeah, Mark, I just tweeted the latest update with the Dominator weather stations now getting a Bluetooth connection. And we're even going to display LCLs using temperature and dew point using the Dominator weather stations and altitude as well. GPS altitude, so we'll have a real-time LCL metric coming in on the real-time display of the Dominator weather stations. You can sign up for email updates at dominatorwx.net. Research grade weather stations coming to fruition. So that LCL product on the Dominator weather stations is going to be an incredibly valuable tool in northeastern Montana tomorrow on Tuesday to assess tornado potential. We really need those LCLs to be below about 2,500 meters. Closer to 2,000 meters would be better. 2 kilometers. Today will be about 2,000 meters, especially along this boundary somewhere. Find a cheeseburger. Also got my fiber in here, fiber supplement. Superfood probiotic fiber supplement, basically drinking mud. Good, healthy, nutrient-packed mud. At my age, it's all about just doing a good bowel movement in the morning. Man, I feel like I'm 25 years old from eating that activated charcoal here for the last week or two. Fiber, activated charcoal, superfoods, sleep. It's the only way to recharge, folks. Thinking about growing my beard again. Not a mustache, but a beard. I'm gonna go full-blown beard. More for protection of the sun, so I don't get that really bad sunburn. Spend a lot of time outdoors. And you get the sun coming in through the windows here of Dominator Fore. Cause some problems. Thank you guys for the super chat. Thank you, Michaela. Never stop chasing. Eventually I'm going to run these streams 24/7 once I get the Dominator RV, the tornado photos all over the inside. Kind of use that as a home base as I migrate from the southeastern U.S. up to the high plains. Do the true mobile lifestyle. That's my plan. Maybe tow Dominator Fore behind it. So I'm coming up to Fort Pierre here, folks. I'm only about 15 miles out. Beautiful rolling hills. Yeah, I might even storm chase in the RV if I can keep it pointed into the wind. The dew point is in here, still 88 over 59, but 89 over 67 this southeast. Dang, Apple Maps looks crazy. It's incredibly detailed. Apple Maps is the way to go. Outlines things like overpass, tourist attractions, crosswalks, 3D animation. Go Apple Maps. iMessage redesign. iOS 15, the new update. Man, I wonder when that's going to be available. That's incredible detail. Looks almost like Google Earth in real time on your phone. Excited for that LCL product on the Dominator weather stations. That'd be incredibly useful on a day like tomorrow to assess real-time tornado potential when kind of the only limiting factor is the height of the LCL. Although the cloud base is going to be low enough to have a tornado. You may remember the Baker, Montana EF3 that happened about 5 years ago. That was on a day that was relatively borderline for whether the cloud bases are low enough to generate tornadoes. You had plenty of wind shear. And that tornado looked like a little bird fart from long range. Many untrained eyes would have called that a landspout just for the simple fact that it's dusty beneath a high base storm. But it was a full-blown supercellular mesocyclonic tornado, and in fact a strong tornado at that in Baker, Nebraska, just about 5 years ago, or Baker, Montana, about 5 years ago. And the real-time display on the Dominator weather stations would also be incredibly useful for that. All right, everybody, that's our morning live. Enjoyed talking to you guys about the setup today and about whatever popped into the mind. I'm going to go get some grub, reevaluate the models, go live again just as these storms are going to initiate at about 5 or 6 p.m. So be sure to tune in. Slow-moving monster supercells along the warm front, Dakotas. That's what happens this time of year. That's High Plains insanity. Never stop chasing.